If you are planning to apply for permanent residency in Canada, you will need these 5 important documents to successfully complete your application. And in this video, we will discuss which are those documents, why these documents are important, and how to get those documents. So let's get started. For the people who don't know, there are 2 ways to apply for PR. One through the express entry and another through the non-express entry. And in both the cases, you will need these documents. For the purpose of this video, we will be focusing on the express entry related documents, but these documents can also help you in your PNP program application as well. So let's get started. The first document is the employment reference letter. Now this particular document is sometimes confusing because people take it for job offer letter, people take it for job relieving letter, people take it for just the reference letter from your manager, people take it for the experience letter. Now all these things are in a way true, but not entirely. An employment reference letter, as per IRCC, should consist of these things. It has to be made sure that this letter is on a legal letterhead of the company. It has to be making sure that your name is correct in the letter, your occupation details, meaning your job title, which does not need to necessarily meet with the NOC code title. It can be your internal job title. For example, a data scientist can also be called data magician, and you don't really need to write data scientist if your company is calling you data magician. One important thing is that people think that NOC code should be a part of this letter. No, it's not. It's a myth. Your company does not necessarily need to add the NOC code. People do it to make the life of immigration officer easier by telling them that, hey, you don't need to match me. I am already an NOC code this, so you can trust my employer's words and think that I am under this NOC code. But that does not mean that the immigration officer will not do a cross check to make sure that your NOC code and the job title and the job duties, they match or not. Okay, so yes, that your salary also need to make sure how many hours per week you work and that you are a full-time employee of the company. And if you are already relieved from the company, you also have to make sure that you add the last date of your job. So an experience letter after your work is very important. If you have an old experience letter during the work and you already left that job, then that experience letter might not count and the immigration officer might ask you to get a new experience letter or might entirely reject the application. It's totally on discretion of the officer. And of course, you have to make sure that if you are matching it with a particular NOC code, most of the duties, at least 70 to 80% of the duties of that particular NOC code should match. Okay, not entirely word to word, but it should seem like they both are the same job. Also, you have to make sure that a lot of these jobs, they have the employment requirements, which means that you have to have a particular type of certification or previous education that needs to be done in order to be eligible to do that particular job. So make sure that whatever job you are doing, even though it's a historical experience, but in the eyes of IRCC, if you are not completing the employment basic requirements and it feels way off, they might question your entire job history. So employment reference letter for each of your job which you are putting in the work history section is important. Now, while we are in this section, I also want to tell you that for many people, they have a lot of experience from back home, from other experience for which they do not have strong relationship with the employer. In that case, you don't necessarily need to show that experience in the work history section. You can just put it into the personal history section. Now, of course, it will not give you points, okay? But then you do not need to show any proof for that experience. So a lot of people who are worried that, hey, I'm not getting this letter, I don't even care for getting any points for this particular experience, but how do I avoid this? So this is the solution. You don't put it into your work history section. You only put it in your personal history when you apply for your PR, just so that you do not have any gaps and you are passing the background check, but you do not need to score any points or show any proof for that particular job if you're not claiming points. Okay. Now I know still a lot of people might have a lot of questions, so feel free to let me know in the comments, book an appointment, or even send me an email if you feel like it, and I'll try my best. Okay, let's go to the next section. Education Credential Evaluation, ECA. For a lot of people, it's WES, the World Education Services. This organization is mostly used to evaluate your education and make sure that it is equivalent to the Canadian education. This is the way Canadian government makes sure that the skilled immigrant whom they are inviting can match the Canadian education. A lot of people don't know that there are 4 to 5 other organizations who also provide you the equivalency report. And I have put the video somewhere here so you can take a look and choose wisely. Sometimes WES is taking a lot of time, so people try to go through other evaluation agencies. Their cost and other things are compared in that video, so you can take a look. Okay, ECA, why this is important? This can help you evaluate your credentials. A lot of people in their home country, they have done bachelor's, and you have to make sure that it is equivalent to a bachelor's in Canada, and that equivalency report will give you a bachelor's credential and give you the points for the bachelor's degree. If you do not do that, and even if you have a master's or bachelor's or whatever, it will not be counted. Now make sure that for the purpose of express entry and IRCC, you only have to evaluate your highest degree. So for instance, if someone has PhD, then they do not need to evaluate their master's, bachelor's or diploma degrees. They only have to evaluate their PhDs. Similarly, it goes with masters. If you have a master's degree, you do not need to evaluate your bachelor's. You just need to evaluate your highest degree, which is your master's. Okay. Now, there are a lot of people in Canada who have completed 2 years of postgraduate studies. Now, they think that yes, postgraduate is above bachelor's. Okay. But in the eyes of IRCC, postgraduate diploma is still a diploma. Okay, it does not get more points as compared to bachelor's or master's, but yes, you can count it as 2 or more degrees. People who have 2 or more degrees, they get more points as compared to bachelor's, but less points as compared to master's. So if someone has done bachelor's from back home and doing a master's here, they can choose master's and do not even need to do an ECA at all, because their master's from Canada is the highest level of degree. So they do not need to provide an ECA for their bachelor's. That's completely all right. But for the people who have done their postgraduate diploma, the bachelor's from back home, if they evaluate it, they can get 2 or more degrees, which will allow them to get more points as compared to just a diploma in Canada. So yes, ECA is important, and yes, it is important for a lot of people. Also making sure that a lot of people even trying to evaluate their high school degrees, that is really not needed. If your highest level of education is just high school, then most likely you will not be even eligible for creating the express entry profile. So think twice before doing it, okay? So now let's move to the next topic, which is language test scores. Now, for those who don't know, language test scores is one of the core part of Canadian immigration journey. You have to be speaking very well and fluent in either English or French or both, depending on how much you want to score in your express entry pool. For English, there are 3 tests which are valid: CELPIP, IELTS and PTE. For French, there is TEF and TCF. Now, I don't dive deep into the French, but let's talk about the English language test. Generally, they are all the general test. A lot of these testing programs have general as well as academic. Academic is used for doing your studies in different countries, and general is used for immigration. Now, a lot of people have this question: if I have already given an academic test and it's still valid, can I use it for my express entry? No, you cannot use it. You'll have to separately give general test. And I know a lot of people think that academic is harder than general. Why do I have to do it again? But hey, that's just immigration, right? So you have to give the general test, whether it's your CELPIP, PTE core or IELTS, but you have to have the score ready. Now, this is one of the critical criteria, because for everything else, even if you have a breakthrough, even if you have a starting point, you can break the ice, create your express entry profile and be ready for it. But language test is the most important. Why? It's because now at this point you got an ITA, okay? You are ready to submit your express entry profile. But before you got an ITA, you have to make sure that your express entry profile is valid in order to submit for the PR application. And let's say you got an ITA and your language test score is expired. That does not mean that, hey, I got an ITA and I'll just submit the expired score. They will not accept it. You have to have a valid score at the time of submission and acknowledgement of receipt. And only if you have a valid score when submitting your PR profile, it will be considered valid, or else you might be taking a risk with your entire file. So that's why this third document is very important. For WES at least, you have to make sure that your results are also been submitted to IRCC so they can see your file when you're submitting it. If you don't do that, then also it may be considered as a ground of rejection. And language test score particular document nowadays is not needed, but the information of the document, your test report form, if it's CELPIP, then you need to provide the PIN number and other stuffs. They all are very important part of your Express Entry profile. And a lot of people take this lightly initially, thinking that it will not have a huge impact, but language test score along with your experience, whether it's a Canadian experience, whether it's a foreign experience meaning your back home experience or any other country other than Canada, combining the language test score with those experience really boosts the points from as much as 50 to even 100 points sometimes. So don't take this lightly, check the CRS calculator, or probably even you can check my another video in which I have shown how to calculate your CRS points even before creating your Express Entry profile, and see how much difference your language test score can make for you. Now before we continue, I would really appreciate if you could like this video, as it will help others find this video as well. Now let's go to the next topic, which is pay stubs for any job experience. Pay stubs for a job experience in Canada is pretty easy. Mostly it's always created by the system, and you always have the PDF copy to be shown to prove that you have had this work experience which is paid, and from this day to this day you have worked. You do not need to show all the pay stubs as a part of Express Entry application. You only need to show the recent few pay stubs. I generally consider 2 months of pay stub to be enough. But then there are situations in which you have a foreign experience. Now I know that a lot of companies in foreign countries, in other countries, they do not have the pay stub systems, so they probably just provide you with the receipt, or it's a cash receipt, and sometimes it feels like it's hard to prove that, right? So in that kind of situation, along with the pay stubs, you will need to make sure that you have the bank statements if the payment was going to the bank. If it was a cash receipt, then you will need another letter which is called salary certificate, in which the employer in their letterhead of the company declares that you as their employee was full-time, pretty much like a reference letter, and showing that you were paid in cash from X date to Y date. And you can even check a template if you feel like doing it. Just go to the website. You have to make sure that you have the pay stubs for each of the experience you have mentioned in the work history. Just like your reference letter, you have to make sure that all your pay stubs are available, are valid, which consist of your name, probably your employee number as well, and the amount you were paid. So lastly, once again, cash receipts and cash payment is not bad. You just have to prove it the right way, because in the past there are a lot of frauds of the experience which has been happened, and a lot of rejections are also mostly a part of this, where they are not able to prove their experience and if it was paid or not. And while we are talking about the job experience, I also want to tell you one more thing, which is that if you came to Canada as a student or for any other reason, and during that application, if for any other reason, right, like whether it was your agent mistake or whether it was your own mistake, whether somehow you just thought that hiding the fact that I was working from X duration to Y duration right now because I'm applying for a study permit will help me out, and if you did not provide that work experience, IRCC has that detail, and trying to provide that work experience now just because you are going to get more points will or might backfire you. So be very cautious, and if you think that you want to discuss further about your profile, please feel free to reach out to me and you can book an appointment, okay? But yes, it is hard if you have done it, if the agent has done that mistake before through which you are applying for a student visa or any other reasons, it can really make your application complicated, and you want to take this very seriously. Now let's talk about the fifth and the most important document, which is the police clearance certificate. For those who don't know, Express Entry is, I would say, yes, they care about your education, they care about your employment and your language test, but the most they care about is making sure that they are not bringing in any wrong personality into the country. They have made that mistake, okay? They have made that mistake in the past. So this is very critical for them. Police clearance certificate, if they don't get it on time, and if they don't have a valid police clearance certificate for any country in the last 10 years in which you resided for at least 6 months, or you had a work permit of that country, you need, or I would say you must provide the police clearance certificate for that country other than Canada. And this could be your work in Kuwait, your work in Dubai, your work in Singapore, or like any other countries, right? Like take it any European countries, you will need the police clearance certificate. And a lot of police clearance certificate has the validity of 6 months. I generally suggest that when you're confident that you are going to get an ITA very soon, at that point of time you prepare for this police clearance certificate. You don't have to prepare well in advance. Some police clearance certificate for certain countries, if you don't visit that country again, that's pretty much valid. And that's actually, to be honest, it's true in most cases that if you visited a country and you did not visit that country after getting your police clearance certificate, you can or you may submit it, okay? But with the discretion of immigration officer, they can still ask you to resubmit a new police clearance certificate if they feel that they want to get something latest. But ultimately, getting a valid police clearance certificate with no records on it is very important for your permanent residency, and it's one of the most important documents to have. If you do not have police clearance certificate by any chance while submitting your express entry application, not the profile, okay? This is after you get an ITA and submit your express entry application, then in that case, you can technically upload an explanation letter providing the proof that you have submitted the application for police clearance certificate and then it is taking time for whatever reason, and IRCC will give you some time to collect that police clearance certificate and will not immediately reject your application. But they will reach out to you after some time asking for it, and they might just give you, let's say, 30 days to give it to them or provide with the updates. And at that point of time, most likely you should have your police clearance certificate with you. So those were the 5 important documents you needed to make sure that your express entry profile is on set and is on a smooth path towards permanent residency. But if you are still here, I would like to give you a quick rundown towards the 5 different other documents which might also be important depending on particular situation. So let's look at them. The first one quickly is the certificate of relationship. This is needed for the people who are applying as a co-applicant with spouse, conjugal partner, common law partner, whatever. You need to make sure that the proof of relationship exists, whether it's the marriage certificates, whether it's the certificate of being common law. Any country, anywhere in the world, you have to make sure this certificate is there, otherwise you will not be able to prove it, okay? The second quickly is the proof of funds. Proof of funds is not required for the CEC, which is Canadian Experience Class applicants, even though they have applied through PNP. Yes, many PNP programs require you to have the proof of funds, but when you get that 600 points and when you come back to the express entry, you do not need to show the proof of funds here because it is exempted, at least as of 2024, okay? So proof of fund is required for the applicants who are going through non-express entry PR applications as well as federal skilled worker, but not for the people who are applying through Canadian Experience Class. Okay, now, so the next one is the certificate of qualification. This is a document which a lot of people think that they are eligible and that it would give them points, but it does not give points to everyone. And even if it does not give points to everyone, for a lot of occupation, certificate of qualification is a need. So you have to provide them even though it does not give you points. For instance, if you are a nurse or if you are, let's say, a physiotherapist or something else, for which if you require a license to work, then you need to provide that certificate of qualification even though it's not giving you points. Alright? The next is the medical exam document. Now, the medical exam document generally is not required nowadays before submitting the profile, but after submitting the profile, at some point of time, they will require you to pass the medical test. Now, pretty much if you do not have any major medical situation, this will most likely not be the ground of rejection. So this is not an easy document per se, but yeah, it's one of the important document as well. And the last is biometric document. Biometric document, if you have already given, I have still seen the cases where for the economic immigration category, which means for the express entry draws, they still require you to give the biometrics again, even though it is valid and you have done it last time and it's valid for 10 years. For any new applicants, I'm sure that most likely you will have the biometric, and I hope that they remove the clause if you already have the biometrics. But at least as of now, this is important. If you haven't given biometrics, they will ask for it. And I think, yeah, that's pretty much it. I hope that now you know about all the documents or majority of the important documents that you will need if you want to get your permanent residency in Canada. So thanks for watching. I hope this video was helpful to you, and I'll see you in the next one.